It's Young here. I'm very happy to have Ernie Brooks back, legendary bass player with 50 years of playing music in New York, and what a career. And Ernie, thanks for coming back.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure.
So we left off with the Modern Lovers period. I don't believe we
You,
talked too much about that yet.
did we talk more about Arthur Russell?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
But we'll bring that up again also.
Okay.
But
But yeah, wherever you want to go, wherever you
so
want to go.
I wanted to know, how did you meet up with Jonathan Richman to get into Modern Lovers?
Oh, okay. That's a funny story. I think Jerry Harrison, right?
Right.
Um, Keyboard player with Talking Heads, a longtime friend, saw Jonathan playing, I think by himself on the Cambridge Common and said, I saw this guy. He, you know, really different, really kind of
Mm.
strange guy who sings these songs. He's got short hair. He wears this white plastic motorcycle jacket. He has a jazz master guitar that is this pieces sawed out of it and it's painted the colors of the Howard Johnson with
Right.
the rest of the restaurants.
Oh, I know.
Jerry
Yeah, the Hojo restaurants.
Hojo, right? Yeah. And it's funny because Jonathan, one of his early songs was "I see the restaurant, it is my friend." Anyway, he played this battered and oh, he had like Howard Johnson stickers all over it too. And he'd play because I went to after Jerry told me about it, I went to see him, and they
Mm.
used to have these free outdoor concerts. Someone who was playing like at the Boston Tea Party would show up, and then you had local people who would play. So go all afternoon. I think it was can't remember now if it was Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, and I played there with bands. With you didn't do you know Andy Paley?
No, I don't know him.
He's a drummer. He was in a band. We were in a band together called Catfish Black, and he was actually in a band with me in high school,
Oh, okay.
way back. He was one. Unfortunately, this has been the season for a lot of people passing away.
Yeah, it has.
Old, like the bass player Sal Maida, like David Johansen,
Oh,
good friend of mine.
yeah, that's a
Very,
shame.
yeah, really sad. But anyway, so Andy Paley, I was in a band with him. He's someone I ended up actually. He's most you could say got most famous. He did a lot of producing. He made a record called the Paley Brothers, but he produced Brian Wilson's solo album, notable. Anyway, and
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
so and he ended up also working with Jonathan after the original band broke up. He, I think he's played a bit with Jonathan, and he also produced some albums of his. But anyway, he was part of that Cambridge scene. So anyway, going to see Jonathan, and I guess we ended up coming back um, somehow. I'm trying to think how I actually, you know, must have been after that we saw him, but I don't know if Jerry had ever talked to him. But then I don't. You know who Danny Fields is?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Danny Fields was a friend of ours through these connections in Boston of people who were involved in the Warhol scene in New York.
Mm.
There was a guy named Ted Hood who lived on Mount Auburn Street. It was like a just a really interesting, very you know, into the there's a sort of what's the world, sort of an underground part of the Cambridge Boston world.
Mm.
And he also knew this woman named Susan Blonde, and they were both in this movie called My Hustler, a Warhol movie.
Okay.
And Danny was part of, knew all those people that hung out at the factory in Manhattan. And so Danny, I guess Danny knew Jonathan from when Jonathan used to go down to New York before the Modern Lovers were formed and hang out because he was a big fan of Lou Reed and the Velvet Undergrounds.
Mm.
And I think then he probably went to the factory too, and he probably met Danny there. And, obviously he did get to know Lou. And then he was a busboy for a while at Max's Kansas City, which was kind of one of the epicenters of that scene.
Yeah, of course.
Friends in New York, I would go there a lot. So there was this kind of crossover between Boston and New York. But anyway, Danny Fields brought Jonathan to the apartment that Jerry Harrison, Andy Paley, and I, and another guy who would, I think, yeah, we were still at Harvard at that point.
Okay.
And that's another fun. Another one of our roommates was Willie Hurst, who,
Oh, okay.
the Hurst family.
Yeah.
So Danny Fields brings Jonathan over and introduces him to Jerry and I, and saying, "Here, these are two guys." He was considering. He started playing with the drummer David Robinson, and he had another bass player, but he was thinking of
okay.
sort of revamping the band. So he came in, he started. First thing I remember, he had on his white motorcycle jacket and then singing the songs to us. And I remember, Someone I Care About. I remember Hospital. I don't know. There was a lot of these amazing songs, which are the ones that went on to become the songs on the first record. But he was like, all I can remember was his total fearlessness and this quality. His voice was rough, everything about, but it was so, like, yeah, just intense, and, singing about stuff that most people weren't singing about, which, I mean, I probably said this if we talked about the Islanders before, but I feel like there's something universal about the sentiments in those songs.
Yes,
What could
I
be,
feel that way when I listen to them.
yeah, I mean,
Yep.
think of, like, I don't want a cocaine sniffing triumph in the bar. I don't want to make a rich girl crawl. I want someone I care about. I want nothing at all.
Yeah, he was really down to the core of
Time.
with those lyrics of life in New York or
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and to me, they still are, as moving today as they were to me back then.
Hmm.
And I was into rock and roll. I mean, I was a big Dylan fan. I was a big blues fan. I can't remember I was into a lot of different kinds of music. But it's not really, but just my background. I don't know. At some point we could get into that too, but
Yeah. So,
how
you
my
know,
musical taste got formed. But anyway, so Jerry and I were both kind of amazed by what he was doing, and I know that Danny Fields thought, and of course Danny Fields has a pretty good record as a, I wouldn't say a taste maker, but someone who saw the future and things in music as he had been involved with the
yeah, he was a visionary for sure.
Doors. I guess I don't know if he managed them. I know he had a lot to do with getting them
Hmm.
noticed. And the Doors, the same thing. He was, I guess, did publicity for them. And of course, then he ended up years later, managing the Ramones. So you
That's
could
quite a
say,
history.
yeah, he had an amazing history.
Oh,
And he's still, I mean, he's still there. In fact, I might have told you last time that we're trying to make a film about sound, mostly because no one has been able to find any uh, video footage from those early days.
oh, okay.
Nobody had video cameras, they didn't exist.
That's true. You're right.
Very few people had movie cameras. Occasionally, people, I keep thinking we're going to find someone with a Super 8 reel that they took at one of our shows. But the reality is, we didn't even play that many shows. I don't know if I hope that movie still gets made, because, it's kind of an interesting story there.
Yeah, there's history there.
Yeah, there's history, and we found a bunch of, we found the original masters from the recordings we did back then, and we want to put out a new album, which would, be a better master. We'll do a better job mastering it, maybe so, and it's
Now,
still good stuff. So,
now, how did
so
you?
we wanted,
Now,
yeah.
you guys had the band, and how did you hook up with John Cale out
Well,
in?
that's a funny story, because after Danny saw us, and then how we talked to Jonathan. Then we said, oh, well, let's try playing together. And we did. And as I said, David, the drummer, was there. So I was on bass, and then Jerry on keyboards, Jonathan on guitar, David Robinson. We played the Cambridge Common. We play, oh, I don't know, teen centers, like out in the suburbs of Boston. We play what they used to call, I don't know what they call them now. I haven't hung out at, well, it's not true. I've been to colleges for concerts, but they called them mixers. And they were like dances.
Okay.
And it was supposed to
It's,
be for
uh,
the girls and the guys to mix, right?
yeah.
We were not the best band that, because our music, again, it wasn't music to kind of be background music, right? It
Mm.
was much more confrontational.
No, I'm sure.
And one of the funny things was Jonathan wrote a song, because we played a lot of mixes, called The Mixer. And I don't know if it's on any of the records, but it's like, starts out, hey girls, do you hate men? How come you don't want to talk to them? And hey guys, whatever, something, something. And then it was just like describing this horrifying world of these people put together, who was supposed to meet each other. They're all embarrassed and self-conscious. It
Oh
was
my
really,
gosh.
and it was a very, it was a dry, it was a,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good song. I mean, it's just kind of this beat and this chord cycle keeps going. And Jonathan's, he changed it all the time, but it was again, people would hear that, and of course, it didn't make them relax. Probably made them more nervous, which is, you realize you're doing something as a band if you disturb people, right?
Mm.
And it's like we never really developed a big following in Boston, but we ended up with a small and fairly devoted following who would come to the different gigs, because, as I said, we didn't really play very substantial or high profile stuff or shows. Living Roxanne wrote this very nice little article about us, saying this interesting thing that's going on in Boston called the Modern Lovers. They're not
Mm.
like anything you've seen. And then all of a sudden, all the record companies, okay, sorry, just,
That's all right. So
you don't get with this.
the record companies were looking for talent at that point, right?
I think they were, yeah. And those were the days. Yeah, this was in 1970, I guess, or just into 71. But like I said, all of a sudden there was all this interest, and
Mm.
people started coming out. We were really excited because we were all, Jerry and I were just on the cusp of graduating, and we up. Who knows if this is going to pan out? So we were kind of starting to play with the Modern Lovers, and we finished our courses and graduated. Though we didn't really graduate because the college was shut down, because
Mm.
this was the height of all the demonstrations against the war in Vietnam. And I protested my graduation and didn't even go to it.
No.
Those were the days, right? The
Yeah.
1969, 1970, the war in Cambodia. But anyway, so it started coming. We were very happy because they'd always take us out to lunch, and we'd say, God, this is great. Free food. That
Yeah.
meant a lot to us. And but I think I can't remember the order, but A&M came, CBS, Clive
Mm.
Davis came to see us when we played at this little high school gymnasium,
Oh,
which was pretty funny. He stood the whole set there with his head against the what was sure vocal master. You could barely hear the vocals, so he leaned his
oh
head. He
boy.
said, because he hear the lyrics, and he stayed. He listened to the whole set, and he wanted to sign us to CBS. And
Mm.
then Warner sent people, then they wanted to sign us, and then basically all the big labels suddenly were after us. Didn't really get to a bidding war because we decided kind of from the beginning that we wanted Warner Brothers, because John Cale was a house producer.
Oh, okay.
We were all of the Velvet Underground, so everybody all thought, and also we all liked the Stooges record that he'd produced. We thought, oh, that's the sound. So we ended up going. God, we went out and did Oh, Jesus. Yeah. No, we went out. I guess it was during the spring of, I think, 71. I should really check all this. There's
Uh,
a guy who wrote a book called There's Something About Jonathan.
Okay.
I made sure I got the dates right. And now that it's years later and my memory gets worse, I go back and check that book and see what I said, 10, 15 years ago when the guy wrote it.
Now, did he let you guys play your songs, John, or do you have new arrangements or?
Oh, as I remember, we pretty much played our set.
Mm,
And we went to this studio in God, we're in Burbank. And
okay.
it was, remember, we couldn't have done it for more than 3 or 4 hours. We did, a bunch of takes. And then, I think we pretty much agreed on which takes were the ones we liked. And there was really a minimum of overdubbing.
Oh,
John, I think he came and did some piano overdubs and he did a Mellotron overdub on that song Girlfriend, which I
oh
think
yeah, I know that
Nick's
song.
using the violin on, it was I don't think it came out. It was on one version of the original records, but
Mm,
no, it was very quick. And we never really thought that would be the record. We thought, okay, this is the demo. And then if Warner's, I think this was kind of a test run with Warner's that they helped fly us out there. We did go back, but we never really completed what was supposed to be the finished version of the records
right.
for a variety of reasons. One of the ones that Jonathan was already, he's someone who's going through a lot of changes, but this big change was deciding he didn't want to play loud electric music. And that happened
Okay.
during the summer when we went back and we're going to really complete the album conventional, step by step, layered way, which might not have really, even if we'd really been able to focus on it, would not necessarily have been better. But as I said, by that time, it wasn't really working out too well because, Jonathan was always saying, oh, we're playing too loud. And
Mm,
John would say, listen, I want you to play that lead more aggressively, sound like you're in pain. And then Jonathan said, well, I don't feel that way. It's the different. I mean, Jonathan still had the passion, but I think it was partly him spending time in California. I don't know, the different, something really changed. He decided he didn't like electricity because he had to, in this sense, he was way ahead of his time. He didn't like electricity because he had to burn fossil fuels to make electricity. Therefore, he was
oh,
go
okay.
acoustic. The band was, okay, I'll play acoustic guitar. Ernie, you can play some bass lines on an acoustic guitar. Jerry, you can play acoustic piano. And David, you can play with rolled up newspapers on a cardboard box. That was
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, it was
That
funny,
that
but all I got to say is when Warner Brothers, also he said there was a moment when we were there and we were still trying to see if we could make it work with John and finish this record. And I remember one time a Warner's guy who was sort of responsible was called and they started talking. And I think Jonathan said, yeah, we'll finish the record, but and we'll finish those songs. But when we go on tour, we're not going to play any of those songs. It's all going to be different songs.
oh,
And
that's oh
and if you
boy.
know the way the music business was then,
Imagine.
that's not what a record company wanted to hear, right?
No, no.
You were
It,
supposed to go out and work those songs, sell those songs,
right.
but
Oh,
that was not going to happen. So, and
I
pretty
got
soon after that, David and I got in our van and drove back to Boston. Jerry stayed in California. Jonathan stayed in California. And
mm,
then he started working with this guy, Matt Kaufman, who ran Berserkly Records, who said to him, it was a typical managerial thing. He had the small label, said, I'm the guy. I'm going to
you're
really,
it, right? Yeah.
well, you don't need the band. I'll take care of you. And he
Oh,
turned out being a serious, con artist. Actually, did put the record out, but he never paid anybody. Certainly never paid the band. I guess he gave Jonathan a little bit for Jonathan thought he was doing all right by Jonathan, but he wasn't. And
Oh boy.
that went on for a long time. And then, of course, all the rest of us ended up being pretty pissed off when that record was released.
Mm.
I remember running into Jonathan was playing with a later version at, I think, NYU, and Matthew Kaufman was there. He said, "Oh, the album's doing great." This was in 1975. It's already sold, more than 100,000 copies. You're going to get some money and all that. And that was the last conversation I ever had with the guy.
Oh
And then in
boy.
2005, like jump forward to 2005, and Jonathan found a lawyer who took him to court, and it traced, he'd take those masters and he'd resold them many times. And it ended up with Sanctuary Records in England, an English label.
Mm.
And I think they were about to go out of business. And this lawsuit went through. First, they said, "Oh, the band still owes money on their original contract."
Oh
And
man.
then this lawyer sued them in, I think, Los Angeles Superior Court. And then their story changed. It was, oh yeah, there's some money in the Bank of Scotland just sitting. So we actually got a settlement.
Oh
And
wow, it's
I got to
good.
say, it was more money than I'd ever made in music.
Mm.
My share, which was, I mean, when it all got divided up, it covered other records that Jonathan made, but just the money for that first album, which turns out it actually sold. I mean, it had a long time at that point. It'd been out for what, 1975 to 2005, 30 years.
Yeah.
And we only got the settlement going back. So a lot of the sales were just, we lost. We lost probably a lot of money, but
Well, we lost a lot of money with White Lines, you
really,
know. Yeah, when they with Grandmaster Flash,
wow.
when they sampled our song back in 1983.
Wow. And did you get any
Well,
money?
finally, yeah, finally it got settled, I think about 10 years ago, but we got money, but it was never as much as that record sold. I know Sugar Hill
Yeah,
went
you didn't get what it.
bankrupt. They went bankrupt, and Ed from 99 tried to sue him, but then they had no money because they went bankrupt, and then the label just went poof, done.
Yeah. Well, I think Sanctuary was almost going out of business. And that's why the lawyer kept saying, he drew up these papers that you got to sign it quick because,
Yeah.
and I don't know if the check's going to clear. And then, yeah, we did get some money, but, and after that, now we do get Sanctuary went out of business, but the master ended up with BMG, which is where it is now, which I guess is, where is it with you? No, I guess it's with Universal. I don't know. Now there's like only a couple of record companies left, right?
Yeah,
Big ones.
three. I think there's three record companies
A
left.
Universal, Sony, and BMG, maybe.
That's it, something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
something like that. But we basically got screwed. And
You played some iconic shows though. I was looking up this New Year's Eve show at Mercer Arts Center with the Dolls and
yeah, 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 yeah.
Suicide. Oh, that must have been incredible.
That really was a wild show. And
Man.
when I remember because I was driving with the equipment down from Boston, and the van broke in Hartford.
Oh,
It had all the equipment in it, and I hitchhiked down to my parents' house in Connecticut,
oh my gosh.
borrowed their station wagon, went back and got all the stuff that I could in the station wagon, like all the guitars, and
Right.
I don't know if I got anyway, you couldn't get very that much of it. So we ended up using the New York Dolls equipment, these
Oh,
enormous
oh
amplifiers.
my
So it was
gosh.
probably the loudest we'd ever sounded. We played before the Dolls, but I just remember the audience. It was glam rock. It was like the first people with torn t-shirts, safety pin
Oh, wow.
together, platform shoes, the crazy hair, everything. And the place was
Oh,
packed. And there's a very, I don't know if you saw that thing online. There's a very funny thing where she quotes some people in the audience
hmm.
talking about us saying, "Oh yeah, these people. Who are these people?" yeah, he looks strange. And,
Oh,
and,
that's
and
funny.
then they said, is this guy for real? Is this a spoof? No, I think he's for real. I think he's for real. It's like people critiquing us who actually were at the show. And someone
Oh,
must
that's
have
great.
interviewed
Oh,
them at the
man.
time. No, I
Well,
was really hoping that someone had filmed that. And I
yeah.
talked to a lot of photographers like Bob Gruen and all these people who might know someone who was there.
So, so now that breaks up. How did you meet David Johansen? I mean, that's an interesting story, right?
Well, that is an interesting story because the Modern Lovers, there was a guy named Marty Thau who ran Buddha Records for a while, and somehow he wanted. I think he had an association with Lieber and Krebs, who were like a big management company.
Okay.
And Aerosmith, oh, that's another funny little sidebar of the Modern Lovers. We played a lot of shows with Aerosmith at these.
Oh, you did? Ah,
Yeah. And they were before they had their record, right? And they were really nice guys. And I liked the band. I mean, they were a little bit like the poor man's Rolling Stones or something. They did a lot of R&B stuff. But they were good. They were good. And, when you think of how different we were, but, and anyway, so their management team got involved with this guy Marty Thau, and then Marty Thau was going to manage the Dolls. I guess he did manage the Dolls for a while, but anyway, so Marty Thau was and he ended up, I guess he and David were pretty good friends. But I remember we actually at some point we did a recording session with them, which I'd love to get the tapes of that. I know we
mm,
did a version of 96 Tears. I can't remember the other stuff we did. And as I said, I guess we became friends. David stayed really good friend. I mean, I guess the last
mm.
time I saw David before he passed away was at a Jonathan show like a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Jonathan played at the Bell House, and he was there with his wife and backstage, and
That's a shame.
we hung out. That was the last time I saw him. Really.
Now, was there
Oh, and
ever,
then I ended up. I did play on his solo album called "Here's
right, I
Company."
saw that.
Yeah, which is, there's a lot of great. I love that one song on there is one of my favorite songs called Heart of Gold. You listen to that sometimes. It's a beautiful
I
song.
got to listen to that.
Yeah.
Did you play the clubs in New York in the early 80s, when all those hurrahs, Danceteria? Were you in a band at that period?
Story too. It was called The Necessaries.
Oh,
And
okay.
we started really in playing a lot in CBGBs. A guy named Ed Tomney on guitar, another guitarist named Randy Gunn, who still plays around. Ed is funny because he went off and started doing a lot of music for films after the group broke up. But the group played for several years, and we did a record on Sire Records.
Oh,
Randy left, and then we got do you know Chris Spedding? You know who he is?
oh, of course. He's a great guitarist.
Great guitar. He was in the band for a year,
Oh, wow.
but we never, and it was frustrating. Sorry, I just gotta, I may move out of the frame. I've got to plug in my
I tried to get
computer.
an interview with Chris, but he never got back to me. So, who knows?
Really, because he's a nice guy, and I saw him. He played at the Bowery Electric. Must have been in February or March.
Oh, okay.
And I hadn't seen him for a while, but it's nice. I hung out with him, and it was good to see him. I hadn't seen him for a while because then I also played with him quite a bit with when I was doing this solo records of Jerry Harrison.
Mm,
Did a couple solo records in the late '80s, early '90s, and Chris played on that. And then we did some touring. And Ernie Worrell was in that band too. The keyboard player from Parliament Funkadelic.
oh, yeah.
Amazing,
Yes. Oh,
you know,
yeah, I think I know who you're
a
talking about.
great
Yeah.
player. Yeah. And anyway, so the Necessaries had this brief but checkered career. And then after Chris left, he got disappointed because he thought we were going to get signed right away, and we didn't.
Mm,
So he went off to other projects. And then Arthur Russell joined the Necessaries.
Oh, that's the connection. Okay.
This is another project, which is a record, which is a compilation of a lot of Necessary stuff that's supposed to come out. It was supposed to come out in May on a record company called Omnivore Records,
Okay.
which is out of Los Angeles. And what happened was the woman who runs the record, her house burned down in Altadena.
Okay.
And the mastering place didn't burn down, but it's got full of toxic
Oh boy.
smoke. Has been unusable till they decontaminate all the equipment. And I guess
Wow.
probably smoke can damage electronics. It's terrible.
Oh boy.
So there we go. That was kind of bad, but it's supposed to come out now, I think the beginning of next year.
That sounds like a not good record to come out.
Well, there's a lot of good music there. It's some I'm not completely, anyway, there's always when you're trying to put, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
And
I know everybody talks about Arthur Russell now more. Was he somewhat popular when he was doing this music, or was he just in the shadows?
it's funny because he was in the first band we had, which was called Flying Hearts, which was myself, a really good guitar player named Larry Saltzman, and a drummer named Dave Van Tegum, who.
Oh, I know him very well. Great player.
Oh, really? Yeah. This was the band, and it's funny because he's the one that calls me every couple of months. Says, Ernie, we got to put out the Flying Hearts record. What the hell? And it's the estate of Arthur Russell is being really difficult.
Okay.
We went into the studio. We got called in by John Hammond Sr., the guy who.
Oh yeah, okay.
The grand old man of recorded Billie Holiday and Charlie Parker,
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan.
Yeah. Wow.
Hearts. And so I have all these. I mean, I have cassettes. Anyway, I don't want to go. I mean, did I tell you that story before? How a lot
I
of
think
this.
so.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is now at the Lincoln Center Library for the Performing Arts, which pissed me off because a lot of those tapes are my tapes, and then they
Oh,
sold them to them. But that's it's a bad business.
it really is. It really is. It just screws a lot of people, creative people, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, also you worked with Rhys Chatham, right? I see.
Oh yeah, actually, that's funny. Wait, where do you live these days?
Central New Jersey.
Oh, that's not too bad. Yeah, because I'm playing on September 10th at the Pace Gallery with Rhys and for a Robert Longo art opening.
I'm going to try to make that. Where's that, in New Jersey somewhere?
No. It's in
New York?
Chelsea. In Chelsea.
Okay. I'm going to try to make that.
Unfortunately, I'll probably just be playing guitar trio. I wish we'd be playing some of the more complex pieces, but that's Rhys's. What's this? That's what he's famous for, right?
Yeah.
E minor for 40 minutes.
I had Rhys on for 4 hours, four segments.
He can talk.
Oh, he had some amazing stories.
Yeah.
Just the early experimental stuff, and then with seeing the Ramones, and
I met him. Yeah.
he's a great guy.
and John Rockwell's review of him saying Mr. Chatham had some difficulty maintaining the vertical.
Oh my gosh.
No, but this is funny because when I first met Arthur, he and Rhys were roommates.
Oh.
Rhys was mostly a flute player, musical curator at the Kitchen, and then he handed that off to Arthur. So there was a deep connection there.
Yeah, there is.
And
I never knew that.
It's really interesting. It's really an interesting story. Also interesting now because the whole thing, Rhys was a big influence on groups like Sonic Youth. Because one of the last times I played with Rhys was at the Brooklyn Museum. I mean, I played with him a lot when I was living in France in the early 90s through
Okay.
kind of late 90s. And we did a lot of the 100 guitar piece over there
Mm,
called An Angel Moves Too Fast to See. Jonathan, you ever hear that band, The Swans?
mm.
One of the
Yeah, oh,
most
yeah, right. I've heard of them.
painfully loud, but
They
pretty amazing.
were. They were very punk sound, and
Yeah.
they were great.
Yeah. So Jonathan and I will be playing that, I know, and Rhys and oh, and Robert. Do you know Robert Longo?
I don't know him. No, I know about his work, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
he plays guitar. He'll probably be playing guitar. I don't know if you know, in New York, there's a bunch of bands with that are artists first, and then they play music too.
Right, right. I'm sure. Yeah, there's a lot of that crossover sometimes.
I always get pissed off because like you guys can sell paintings. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Did you play at Lincoln Center, the 100 guitars? Were you part
Yeah, I
of
was
that?
actually, I think it was 200. Yeah, yeah, I played
Because we were
in.
the next band. We were the
That's right. I think I must have
yep.
met you. I must have
Yeah,
met you
we were at
because
the
it was.
we played after you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's
was a
right.
great
I
night.
remember, guys. I saw. I was thinking, you guys were fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah, that was.
yeah, it was a great night. It was a we played really good that night. There's actually some footage of that, video footage I have that I've been putting out a little bit on the channel from that. They did a great job filming it.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, I remember that. I remember that well because that concert we we were supposed to play it the year before, and it got rained out,
Oh,
which
okay.
was terrible because it was rain. Everybody had done all this rehearsing and everybody was in place, and then they decided it would be too dangerous I don't think it really was.
Hmm.
But and then like miraculously we were able to do it the next year.
Well, you guys sounded fantastic. It was, oh man, it was in your face,
Yeah.
beautiful resonance of harmonic just
Well,
coming at you.
to me, the best show I think was when we played in Paris at the Basilica de Sacre Coeur, which is a
Oh, okay.
huge, I guess, Romanesque church on the top of Montmartre,
Oh,
and it was very resonant and amazing.
hmm.
It was for this thing in Paris they call Nuit Blanche, White Night, and it went. I think we started at like 10 at night and went to 6 in the morning.
Wow. I think Reese must have mentioned something about that because,
Those his pieces are modular, so you know it could be extended.
yeah, you have to send me info about that show. I'm gonna definitely want to meet in person. And Reese, I don't remember seeing him at that event, but
Yeah,
there was a lot of people. Now, what about the band Gods and Monsters? Can you talk a little bit about that?
funny because I was just Gary who called twice.
Is that really?
I said,
That's
I'm doing
funny.
an interview. I'll call you back. Yeah, Joe's place on August 7th.
Okay.
And this is with this new drummer who's a powerhouse named Calvin Weston. You know him?
Okay. Name rings a bell. I don't know of
Played with
anything.
the Lounge Lizards and Blood Elm. You know Blood Ulmer? You
Yes,
ever?
I've heard of them.
He was his drummer for years. I mean, he's a guy from Philadelphia,
Mm,
and I'll just say he's an amazing drummer. That's all.
mm.
It's crazy for me to, powerhouse. But so we're doing that, and we've got some other gigs, and we're supposed to do a little tour in Japan in October, I think. I think
Oh,
that,
that's got to be nice.
yeah, that'll be nice. It'd be
I
nice
love
to
going
get
to
out.
Japan. We went to Japan for a week, the Liquid band, and they really love music there. They know so much.
They know this. It's amazing. They know more about you than you do yourself.
I was going to say that. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, and they're collectors. They love vinyl. You know, I know. I haven't been there for a long time. I played there with a singer songwriter named Elliott Murphy, who used to live in this.
Right.
It's funny. He's one of those. He and my two friends, expat musicians, are him and Rhys,
Mm,
who lived in Paris for the last more than 20 years.
wow. Never came back, huh?
Never
Stayed
came
there.
back.
Just stayed in France, right? Get out of the
I
main the
married her.
craziness
I
here,
dragged her
right?
back to Long Island City.
Oh man,
What?
that's funny. So
But I gotta say, France looks pretty good to me now.
it
They've stepped
does.
they've stepped back from the brink, right?
Oh boy.
They still have the rule of law. They've told Marie Le Pen she can't run because she is corrupt.
Yep. So what is it? How's it like in New York City now? Just what's the vibe like with all this craziness going on?
Pretty, it's pretty awful. I'll just tell one quick story of
Sure.
this. I teach. I'm probably going to have to look for more day job. This is a part-time day job, and where I teach immigrants in the Bronx, and it's kind of English. It's something called family literacy, but it's working to help their families, get integrated with
Yeah.
health care and all the different things in New York City. So, and these, I just, they're the best people in the world. That's all I can say.
Mm.
A lot of the different classes there. And in the middle of the night, Ice shows up looking for her brother,
Oh boy.
pounds on the door. It's 10 guys with AR-15s.
Oh my gosh.
She lets them, her partner lets them in because they have a warrant for the brother.
Oh
And they come
boy.
in, they're pointing their fucking guns at her kids. She has a 4-year-old daughter.
Oh
I mean, this is
man.
how is this? This is as bad as any kind of fascist
That's horrible. Oh.
traumatizing. And someone was just pointing out to me that the hotel behind here, I'm looking out the window at it now, it was a regular hotel, and then it became housing. Seemed like it became immigrant housing,
Mm.
and there were people from, I guess, a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Hondurans, El Salvadorians, Venezuelans there, and the kids were riding their bicycles. And I ran into the guy on the street, and he said, "Do you realize things have changed?" And
Boy.
it was this life that was there, and it was kind of this joyful street life, and it's gone. And he
That's,
said, "Yeah, ICE comes and they park in front of the hotel, and they
oh.
wait to grab anybody." And it's just how, you know, it's funny because I went to a march, and this says it all. I won't talk more politics, but there was a woman holding a sign, and it made shameful again,
Mm.
and really is. This country is becoming cruel,
It is. You're
and
right.
and, and I won't even mention stupid because it's the policies are all stupid, and we're not going to have any electricity because we're going to go back to burning coal. We're going to pollute the thing, and China is going to be selling us electricity that they produce by alternative means. I mean,
Right.
everything is going to go backwards. It's over
It
unless we
is.
can do something. You're part of. You got to be part of it, man. You've got a platform to speak out of.
I should. I mean, now with this AI also, they're promoting that to the max, these social media companies. I mean,
Oh, listen, that the power
it's amazing how far they've
of
gone.
change people's minds. Yep, how to think and how to do stuff, and then you know it's awful.
Well, I think the big companies just want to get rid of employees, put in these robots, that
Oh,
programmed, and then you have maybe 2 or 3 people like Amazon. They're not going to lead any people in a year or so. They're going to just have robots or machines. All you have to do is program. That's it.
yeah, yep. I know. There's going to be. I mean, look, there's just going to be. I mean, I don't know what the answer is to that. It's like because once those technologies are out there, somebody's going to implement it, right?
Right.
And I guess what, of course, the idea is also if your country doesn't do it, someone else is going to get the
And that's what
advantage.
they're doing. They're competing against each other to get, this very intelligent AI system that
But in
thinks for
turn, as I said,
itself.
all this, yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean, one of the things that's an absolute fact is all this stuff takes huge amounts of electricity.
right.
They
Exactly.
build that what they those big server farms that cover acres and acres and require multi-gigawatts of electricity.
Right. Of
And
course.
that's puts is already going to be a strain on our grid. And that's one of the reasons why we need wind power electricity. And this is the direction we're going after Biden passed all the subsidies for that. And it's all being clawed back
Yeah.
and stopped. And it's just, it's mythically done. But that's, I'm sorry. Well, okay, we can talk more about music, but
Yeah, that's all right.
AI is very problematic for music. AI is pretty problematic for music when you
Well,
can
I
like
wanted to
say,
ask you,
hey,
I
I
wanted to
want a
ask,
song.
yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think it's going with music with AI? I mean, with these laptop computer
You
artists.
know, I think I, it's funny because I don't really know much about it. The other day I thought, oh, I'm going to try to download this new program that's part of Google to see if I can use it to make some interesting visual stuff for some of my songs, just stuff I've been doing. I want to put out. I can't. I'm so inept with computers. I haven't actually been able to even start launch it on my computer. But I did. This computer is. I got a computer that's really powerful that I got secondhand, and so I feel I'll be able to do it. But I think it's just. I don't know if it will be able to make stuff that will be convincing that it is new and creative. It's certainly going to be very able, exactly like all the stuff that you've heard before and is a hit.
That's
So that's
true.
what's scary is it will pump out stuff following algorithms of what makes a hit song. I guess some of the
Right.
computer programs we've had before did that, but this is just going to make it so easy that
That's what it is.
kids, I want a song that sounds like this guy. And they'll have samples of all the instruments. My only thing is the people who lose will be the artists once again.
Now, do you sell your music on Bandcamp at all? Do you use that platform?
It's funny because Steve Shelley, the drummer, and he puts out a lot of the cattle. He makes vinyl out of Sonic Youth concerts, and he does that through Bandcamp. I think
Okay.
that's his primary platform. And he really thinks it's good. So a lot of people like Bandcamp.
Yeah, I mean, I
I mean,
haven't had much,
I
I
gotta
haven't
start
had,
work. I gotta stop this. I gotta get working. I gotta get this stuff out there.
yeah, I haven't had much luck with it. Once in a while, somebody will uh, download something, but now I've got these archive records. I'm just putting them out for free. They're archives. Let people
Oh
hear it.
yeah.
I just,
Well, you should check out Omnivore because go to their website. I mean, a lot of reissues of old stuff.
okay.
Is this stuff that's been out before that you're putting out, or is this
Uh,
stuff from concerts?
well, no, this is like from my early days of music, early 80s when I had home studio doing experimental music while Liquid Liquid was going on, stuff through the 90s. I've been going through my archives of music that a lot of it's never been out. So that's what I've been putting out. But I don't know. I figured the last few things I've put out
Guys,
archives
if you
free,
do, you probably.
you know, free for everybody to hear, you
I mean,
know.
well, that's nice. That's nice. I can imagine. I mean, I always think that the influence of, I mean, you call it a podcast, yeah?
Yeah, podcast, YouTube channel, interviews, whatever you want to call it. But this has turned into
A
like
huge
a
part
really,
of media structure.
it's becoming a history of music, the channel, because I really did not want to do this many. I thought to do a couple of them and see where it goes, and then people wanted to do them, and now
Mhm.
it's just been quite some interesting stories to say the least. What's next coming up?
Do whatever we can to get whatever this modern lovers thing turns into uh, a new director
Mm.
may take it up.
Is there a chance of a reunion? A Modern Lovers, like a reunion show?
Well, everybody, probably except for Jonathan, would say sure.
Mm.
And I would say sure. And helping produce his last couple of records.
Okay.
So maybe that's we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We could probably have a couple of pretty cool shows if we got back
Oh,
together.
I'm sure there'd be people really like that 80s period, 70s period of in New
Yeah,
York bands.
that's
They
true.
it's a big thing.
Yeah. But so tell me, so what about Liquid Liquid?
What would you like to know?
Would that play everybody that was in the band?
Well,
Just are you guys ever, do you still play?
yeah,
No.
I still play music. I have a little home studio here, and I still record. I have friends I play with.
You know Peter Zumo, the trombone?
Oh yeah, he's great.
Peter, he's great. Well, we had it was a quartet, me, he, Bill Rule, percussionist. Trying to think. We went over and we hooked up with a guy from Optimo.
Yeah.
I think he was playing beats. Yeah. What was his
Okay.
name? He's a cool guy.
Keith
He's really
Keith
fun to play.
MacGyver and Johnny Wilkins are the two. They were the two optimal guys. In fact, Keith is very sick right now, so I'm prayers out to Keith. He's got, I think, cancer or something with his
Oh,
head. So I don't know. It's not looking
oh, that's
good,
too.
but they had a great
Yeah, but
club
I
night.
think they yeah, yeah. No, we did. He came and did stuff with us at some of the shows. I know that, and I don't know if he set up some of the gigs. This was like in 2014.
Okay, he was a huge
We
Arthur
played
Russell
around England
fan,
and Scotland.
big Arthur Russell fan.
Arthur's. It's funny how a lot of different people in different types of music loved Arthur's music,
Yeah. Well,
but
you couldn't pigeonhole Arthur into one type of music. That's probably why he's,
no,
you know, didn't get that notoriety at first because he was doing all types of stuff.
yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, if you want to do more, I'm
Sure,
happy
let's
to
do
do.
another one at some point because you've got so many great stories, Ernie, and you're a living legend with all this music you've
Well,
done. You've seen it, done it, all this.
frustrated because yeah, well, oh. And another guy, I guess I also played with Glenn Branca, which was funny because he and Rhys were big rivals, right?
Yeah. I didn't really know Glenn Branca too well. He was kind of hard edged around the. I just was not
No,
able to
no,
get it.
he was like yeah, my vision of him is like his face, wrapped out, able to see his face,
Yeah,
snarl. I remember
tension, a lot of
I
tension
ran
there.
him on the street.
He was something.
Yeah, but it was fun playing with him. It was fun. It was a band called Theoretical Girls that I believe Thurston was in, but I'm not even sure. It was like some of the Sonic Youth people were
Mm,
in, and Glenn was in, and I guess Rhys was in it too for a while.
mm,
But I love that name, Theoretical Girls. I think that's one of the best band names I've ever heard.
that is.
And hopefully next time we'll still be able to do this, and
I hope
we
so.
won't be the armed people won't come for us while we're trying to talk.